Well, as I'm sure you can imagine, I've been unable to sleep at night of late due to my alarm over the possibility that President Obama might nominate this creature, Larry Summers, as chairman of the Federal Reserve to succeed Ben Bernanke. As I'm of the opinion that my previous YouTube video addressing this was victimized. It garnered no viewership for some reason. And after thinking about it just a little bit, I concluded, properly in my opinion, that it probably had to do with a lack of realization of what the Federal Reserve is all about. I mean, this situation, you have an individual, Larry Summers, with his promotion of unregulated derivatives, his influence in ending Glass-Steagall, his idiocy surrounding his tenure at Harvard University, and his buddy-buddy relationship with Kenneth Lay of Enron. I mean, this guy has proven himself to be a menace to the economy, beyond that, a menace to society. Now, I firmly believe that a menace to the economy and a menace to society should not be nominated to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. That's that's basic stuff, pretty basic. But sometimes basic common sense is not what happens. It just doesn't materialize for some reason. Now let's look at this Federal Reserve. What the heck? The Federal Reserve is a private entity owned by banks and wealthy financiers. It is not, repeat, not a federal agency and never will be. Now, when you look into the history of the Federal Reserve, then you'll start to get perhaps a clearer picture of what this organization is all about. Now, there were financial crises before the Depression, one of which occurred in the early 1900s. As a result of this, the population began to lose faith in banks, in the banking community. Now, this is problematic, to say the least, for bankers and financiers who are dependent on money. They're dependent on money. If they don't have access to money, they can't function. Money is their life. It's their only thing in their life. But anyway, going back a little bit, a group of wealthy financiers and bankers met on Jekyll Island. That's off the coast of South Carolina, where millionaires played. And it meant to be you know, it meant to be a place for millionaires, which meant something back then in the early 1900s. A millionaire then was equivalent to a billionaire now, thanks to such things as the Federal Reserve. But we'll get back to that in a minute. At any rate, these individuals said to themselves, "Hold on a minute. We might have a problem with this money situation and people not trusting banks. What are we going to do? Something's got to be done. Let's come up with a plan of some sort." So they basically hashed things over. Their host apparently being James, I should say, Pierpont Morgan. That might ring a bell with J.P. Morgan to some people. But at any rate, they hashed up a plan to stab or promote. It took a while. It took a while for it to get through Congress. But in 1910, at Jekyll Island, which should actually be called Hyde Island, but they came up with the concept of a United States central bank to be called the Federal Reserve. Now, right off the bat, you see some trickery. Federal Reserve. That would make people think of some kind of federal agency, federal outfit of some sort. Oh, no. No, it's not. No. The Federal Reserve was set in place as a privately owned entity to serve the interests of the banks, the banking industry. It began with a dual mandate. I shouldn't say it began, but over time, this dual mandate became to ensure stable inflation and low unemployment. That was the original mandate. But in establishing this Federal Reserve, the main driving feature was access to capital. How can we get access to capital if people don't trust the banks? Access to capital. You can't make money without money to work with. That was the reason for establishing the Federal Reserve, which, by the way, to reassure the populace, became associated with a guarantee or insurance on deposits. That was very helpful in moving it through a Congress which did have some problems with the Eastern banking establishment and what the concept of the Federal Reserve meant. Also, the fact that they established 11 separate branches outside of New York to calm politicians who had a problem with it for some reason or another. Now, in 1971, the United States went off the gold standard. At that point, an individual or a country could receive $35 an ounce for gold. Now, just real quick here to show how effective the Federal Reserve has been with monetary policy. An ounce of gold now is a low point of 1,300. And believe me, it'll probably be higher than that in the not too distant future. Now here's an aside. Now somewhere along the situation with the Federal Reserve, the concept of primary dealers evolved, apparently in 1960. But if you try to research the connection between primary dealers 1960 and how it evolved and came about, it is very difficult to get information. As a matter of fact, I'm very surprised that it took the parties behind the Federal Reserve so long to establish the primary dealer network. The primary dealers, of course, have first access to monies, act as middlemen, unneeded middlemen in some people's opinion, to get money out into the economy. Some people say, why don't you get money out to the economy? It had nothing to do with these people. By the way, look at the list of primary dealers. There are 21 of them. One feature many of them have in common is that they've all been subject to fines and settlements without admitting guilt or innocence. Now, you use a little bit of common sense. You don't agree to a settlement or a fine without knowing you did something wrong. That's common sense. But that's something for, I suppose, for a different time. While we're on the subject of primary dealers, I hope everyone realizes that MF Global was temporarily given status as a primary dealer. MF Global, run by John Corzine, individual did not even have an active, current, renewed Series 7 broker's license because of his stature as a former senator and governor. He was given a waiver. Then a collapse and a raiding of segregated accounts later, their status as primary dealer was removed. Mr. Federal Reserve Chairman said that status as a primary dealer is not a seal of approval of the institution. What? That's ridiculous. That's absurd on the face of it. These people are entrusted to get federal money circulating throughout the economy for the betterment of the population. And you're saying that designation as a primary dealer doesn't involve a seal of approval? Well, an idiot would see the stupidity of that. All right. So the Federal Reserve, the passage of time, particularly since the beginning of the Great Recession, has instituted a third mandate, and that's goosing the stock market and artificially inflating the value of risky assets. Now, that does not portend well for the future. Not only that, they're continuing to buy this trash. The primary dealers get almost free money from the Fed. They bundle it up in all these securitized derivatives, sell it back to the Fed at some price that they determine. Then they get fresh money from the Fed to do it again. This is what's happening to the money that's supposed to circulate into the economy. It's circulating into bonuses and fees for the primary dealers. Now, the Federal Reserve is a very dangerous institution. It's a private institution. It's in place to serve the banks, and it's done a superb job of doing it. Now, normal paycheck to paycheck citizen, how well has it served you? What kind of interest rate are you getting on your deposits? What kind of interest rate are you paying on credit cards? Credit cards. These banks get the money for free, and you feel grateful if you have less than 10% on your credit card. 10% financing. Now, if anyone thinks that Larry Summers, a party greatly responsible for the mortgage-backed securities, derivatives-driven economic collapse of 2007 and 2008, is a man to guide us through the future as a head of an organization which already is in existence to serve the banks, then we all have a big problem. That's that's why I feel we're in a state of emergency. And again, I hope somebody else besides, well, like I say, my wife says I'm the only one that watches these videos I do anyway, and I'm narcissistic about it, and nobody cares, all this kind of stuff. But as I said last time, Larry Summers is not a good person, nor is the Federal Reserve an honorable organization. Keep this in mind in all your planning that you do. It's vital. Goodbye and good luck.